Well, so I am really looking forward to this. As Matt said, the RIG has been around for nearly 2 decades. I've been involved in it since the beginning, and throughout that time, a recurring theme is that many of the major problems that leaders of large engineering systems delivery projects face are not actually to do with the system that they're being built. They're to do with people and contracts and KPIs and incentives and what we might perhaps talk about as the soft systems around the technical systems. Now, we know, and at the UK Autumn Conference just a couple of months ago, Michael C. Jackson reminded us that the attempts to apply systems engineering unchanged to soft systems back in the 60s and 70s didn't work at all. But that does not mean that it's not possible to think systematically and apply systems thinking to these sorts of problems. And that's my interest. That's why I joined the University of Birmingham to try and make some progress in this area. So it's been an enormous privilege to have 3 students of my MSc in Railway Systems Engineering and Integration who have put up with me as their supervisor while looking into these issues. Now, in theory, don't tell anyone about this, but in theory, students pay the university and a small amount, and that comes my way. So in theory, I'm supposed to teach them and they're supposed to learn. In fact, I've learned an enormous amount from my students. I am very confident that you are going to soon as well over the next few minutes. So we'll run through 3 presentations which have things in common and things that are very different. And I'd like to invite Guillermo Hidalgo-González, who is Principal Design Engineer at Network Rail Design Delivery, to tell us a little bit about his project. Guillermo.
Thank you very much, Bruce. And just a quick introduction about myself. As Bruce said, I'm Guillermo Hidalgo, and I am a chartered civil engineer by trade. But a few years ago, I moved into the engineering management world, delivering multidisciplinary design projects. And I work for NRDD, which is Network Rail's internal design consultant. So a bit of the objective of my research you can see on the screen. This comes from my own experience undertaking option appraisal in engineering projects, usually at Group 3, which is but now we have moved on to PACE, but PACE 1 or Group 3. And I did identify a certain amount of inconsistency on how projects how engineering solutions got appraised, and inconsistency cannot guarantee reliability, cannot guarantee reliable results. It is a very wide topic, so decision making involves engineering, heuristics, psychology, value management, economy, etc. And I went for that and tried to find, if not a solution, achieve some sort of like process that can be used to enhance this. It won't provide the right solution in all cases, but it will. It's subject to a high level of subjectivity, but it should provide some sort of like framework that can help in making decisions. So my approach to the research that I did involved defining the success factors, what good looks like, and then in the literature review I tapped into policies, regulatory framework, the standards that the network follows, and some previous research on the topic. Then I did a case study analysis. I looked at 50 randomly selected option selection reports where railway engineering solutions were appraised. And then I made a proposal based on the findings that I did, and I'll cover the conclusions at the that I found at the my final slide. So I talked about the success factors. These are the ones that I identified. This was to define what good looks like in terms of the output of an engineering or the process through which a single option is found amongst several ones. You can see what I chose, and so comprehensiveness, reliability, traceability, consistency, timeliness, and at the bottom I also added scalability, so it can be applied to different projects of different complexities, and also compliance within the network rail world of standards. Also, some information about the literature review. So I did have a look at the railway industry policy and the regulatory framework, how public money must be invested, because it is subject to how the Treasury mandates that public money is spent in this country. Also had a look at how this could be combined with the network rail PACE life cycle to try and make it compatible with it, so so it can be blended seamlessly with the current mechanisms that network rail has in place, and also had a look at the current structures for project delivery, and looked at compliance with quite a few other aspects of network rail, so health and safety, the current initiative for project acceleration, project speed, etc. Now on decision-making methods, this is an enormous world, but the main two ones that are used in these cases are the cost-benefit analysis and multi-criteria decision methods. Like I said, very deep topic. I'll touch on that a little bit more. Requirements. It's another fundamental aspect that may influence decision making. I also made this compatible with network rail's MVP, minimum viable product, current initiative, and I also deemed quite pertinent to include competence and bias, because there are human factors that may affect the decision making. In terms of competence, network rail provides a quite solid has a pretty solid framework for managing engineering competencies. This slightly, it is lighter for option appraisals. And in terms of bias, I had a look at touched quite lightly on it, but risk aversion, optimism bias, and also commercial bias, which may have an influence, especially if we've got private companies involved in decision making. I did undertake, as part of the analysis of the option selection reports, I did analyze them in two different ways, one qualitative and one quantitative. You can see some information on the screen about that. Possibly the most important, most relevant finding you can see there on the screen is that this fact that 8% of the reports that I analyzed were rework from previous studies where the wrong decision had been made. It was generally based due to issues with project requirements, changing requirements, invalid requirements, and the process. And there was also a pretty common aspect on all the OSRs. There was quite limited traceability on decisions. On decisions and the competence of those undertaking the option appraisals. So I have extracted this chart from my research. This is possibly the most insightful chart of everything of all of my study. It provides the distribution of how the decision-making methods were used amongst all those 50 option selection reports. Some of them you can see in there. It was found that there is a massive variety. You can see on the screen. Cost-benefit analysis was used, simple aggregate weighting, the analytic hierarchy process. Those are formal decision-making methods. On many occasions, several were used. Also, on several occasions, informal decisions informal decision-making methods were used. Also, sometimes voting or on other instances, just instead of having a method, ways of displaying information, analyzing it, were used to inform the decision, but the decision was made informally. And I am talking about RAG, red amber green matrices, and benefits, advantages and disadvantages tables, which is another classic way that you're going to see in this type of reports. So there is a lack of consistency, and like I said earlier, this may bring a potential lack of reliability on the outputs. Informal decisions, touch on that. I am not saying that informal decisions are inappropriate. They are appropriate in some cases, and sometimes it is just the right way of doing things. But yeah, I just wanted to flag out that they are sometimes done, and sometimes they do not provide the right output. So I proposed a method or a framework for undertaking option appraisal engineering projects. So I wanted to define it. I wanted to split it in five different tiers, depending on project complexity and the complexity of the decision being made. So you can see them from the top to bottom in increasing order of complexity. I found quite relevant having a what I call the project complexity tier 0, where sometimes we know that we don't need a formal method to assess a decision. We know that it is the right thing for simple decisions. I just wanted to give that flexibility to whoever's assessing those options. This can be potentially aligned with Network Rail's 4-tier level of control system, which could be easily aligned with the project complexity tier. And I did not develop all of the decision-making methods you can see there, but I chose to develop it through the one I called PC2, which is for middle complexity projects, and that would be a combination of Thomas Elsati's analytic hierarchy process and simple aggregate weighting, which is commonly used. It's a combination of that. And yeah, that's the one I am going to develop. So for my proposal, it was split in. I decided to split it in two parts, in two separate but interrelated processes. So this is what you can see on the screen is the option appraisal sub-process through which you get the this one would be led by the appraisal team. My proposal is that this appraisal team is led by an appraisal lead, which would align quite well with a sponsor in Network Rail. With the help from internal experts, and this can be managed. Well, competence can be managed via the standard Network Rail competency management system. So the main input here would be the appraisal criteria, which would be derived from the requirements, and a pairwise comparison workshop would take place with all parties where this appraisal criteria would be compared, and with the all of this would happen at the same time at 192. So the criteria are compared, and then with the analytic hierarchy process, with a simple spreadsheet, the relative weightings of the different criteria can be calculated. I call this the priority weightings, and those priority weightings can be taken to the what you guys see here, option selection workshop C1, where both the appraisal team and the engineering team, the design team would be in there with potential selected stakeholders, and the different options would be scored against the different criteria. It would get multiplied by the weighting calculation we have previously calculated, and that would output the single option. Like I said, each individual would be selected based on competence within their own area of responsibility. So this would be one. This would be more about the option appraisal of the options themselves, but also interesting would be how those options get developed, how those options get designed, and this is the other sub process. So this is the what I call the option design sub process. This one will be led by the design team. For those who are familiar with Network Rail, this would follow. I mean, the design team would follow quite closely what's defined in 02009, which is engineering management for projects in there, and the design team would develop the options. B1 based on project requirements and the minimum requirements aligned with the minimum viable product, and potentially with some design to cost input. They would get okay. So that would be the process of option development, and then those options would be sifted in a workshop with information from the cost estimates, and then they would be brought to the option selection workshop, which I've commented on previously, and the single option would be out of that. So you can see on the screen. This is what both sub-process combined look like, and it's pretty much both of them combined, and both of them are interrelated. They are aligned with Network Rail standards in a scalable way. You can see that both emanate from the project requirements and finalize the single option. I decided to add several feedback loops. One here, for example, to just discard or do further work on as part of the sifting for those options that wouldn't meet the minimum requirements, and the potential to identify any trade-offs, and so that would enable requirements to be looked at again. And some information about the benefits and risks. So, like I said, it's a very broad, complex subject. It wouldn't be reasonable to assume that the process would always come up with the right choice. That would be a very adventurous assumption. But it would provide further consistency on how options are appraised, and it would be compatible with Network Rail's standards. Within the regulatory framework, the internal competency framework of Network Rail, and it would be worth it. Something I really think would be worth trying in a project. The main risk, I mean, you can see it in red, is garbage in, garbage out. The project is only as good as the information it gets, and how competent the people who run it is, and. I just wanted to touch a little bit on the next steps. So at the minute, we'll have presented to several stakeholders within Network Rail in the process of identifying a project where it can be applied. But it would be an iterative endeavor. But there is a fair amount of interest, and something that you may see being deployed in the coming months. I have also opened it to further research, so a generalization of the process for the rest of the complexity tiers, a critical one, which would be a development of competence requirements for option appraisal, which at the minute is pretty light touch in Network Rail, and a formal mechanism to manage bias. There's lots of study about it online, but would need to be adapted on this. And possibly a formal method to derive the MVP requirements, which is something that Network Rail are doing at the minute, and it is challenging, but yeah, it is. There's a lot of effort put into it. Very good effort, and yeah, some potential further analysis of cases, and I think that's everything from me.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. I propose, I should have said this at the beginning, to take questions for all three presenters at the end. By the way, Guillermo and I were talking about the importance of framing the problem in this sort of work, and I do rather like the IDEF 0 diagram that was near the beginning. I think that is a lovely way of framing the problem. So, Guillermo, could you just click on one more so we see? Introduce Magdalena Krusinowska, a requirements management expert at Network Rail, whose topic of research is also requirements management. Magdalena.
Thank you, Bruce. Magdalena, or friends call me Mags. I'm working on improving requirements management within Northwest and Central region for Network Rail, and it just felt really convenient to do some studies around that, mixed with some academic evaluation as well. So I'm going to talk to you today about my investigation into challenges with applying requirements management process at Network Rail. And as Guillermo said earlier, requirements are challenging, and I think we all understand that across industries as well. So to tell you a little bit about the background, I'll start by saying that Network Rail, which majority of people would know, that it plays a really important role in responding to changing economy and passenger needs, and it has a great power in influencing those changes. When we look at the reports for 2011 to 2021, it is recognised that the growing importance of the railway industry is there, and the states are putting even more emphasis on improving the railway and how we operate the railway in Britain. So in response to some of those state reports in 2020, the industry adopted SPEED, which was to provide more efficient and effective working methods, and that was followed by introduction of PACE framework by Network Rail in 2021, and that was to help the railways address emerging economic challenges and work a bit more efficiently in delivering projects. So PACE allows flexibility in delivering programs and projects and also portfolios, but it relies on professional capabilities of individuals in that decision-making, and often that can be a little bit challenging as people don't really feel too confident in some places, as I found. So the biggest problem really is that clients don't always get what they want. The scope changes, and estimated costs are increasing for the railway projects, and opportunities for improvement in managing requirements are there coming out from those challenges. Am I hearing someone speaking in the background? No? Online? No? Sorry, in my head then. So my study focused on investigating challenges with applying requirements management. However, for today's presentation, as we focus on soft systems, I present to you today a context of soft systems in my research. So I won't go through every single bit of my research, I'll just focus on the soft system element. So the objectives were for me firstly to visualize what are requirements, what is requirements management methodology, where does it sit, how does it align with the higher methods or frameworks. And as you can see, if you follow the line from the left to the top, it starts from the HM Treasury Green Book model, where all the strategic outline business cases are coming from, and that is then being diluted into the requirements at the client level. And as we go through the outline business case, the more detailed requirements will be emerging, and then we're moving into full business case where those requirements are delivered after. Furthermore, I thought it was very important to also visualize the requirements and how they sit within the V cycle. We all know what the V cycle is, but the V cycle for the railway might look slightly differently, because for me, I found that it's it's a life cycle. It's a life cycle of projects. It's a life cycle of programs, and so it doesn't just include the V itself. It goes beyond. So it starts almost with the evaluation of planning the railway, whether to enhance it, renew it, and then looking into setting objectives, and then going through the process. And after that, we need to decide whether the system is degrading and is worth maintaining and repairing, or is it just down to the decommissioning and removal of it. And then that system evaluation cycle follows again, because we continue improving our railways. We either build new or enhance or maintain. So that decision making, I believe, needed to sit in the V cycle, where the requirements are absolutely critical. So the objectives of my research were to define what the barriers in the current requirements management processes are. I was looking to categorize challenges in requirements, analyze suitability of PACE framework and how it fits within the business objectives. I was looking at the impact of change, risks of different changes, and also looking into opportunities and recommendations. And then I looked into investigating the current requirements management practices, analysing of challenges in those practices, supported by literature review, seeing what other people say in that field. I looked into case studies, some really good practical examples, and I ran some staff surveys to see what people say about the process and about their own competencies and capabilities of applying the process. And I looked into a lot of quantitative and qualitative data that I researched. My methods included looking into industry reports, looking into organizational structure and how changes within the structure impact on the process that's just recently has been developed. So 2021 was only a few years ago, but the structure has changed in the last couple of years, and that affected how that adaptation was going. It was also worth looking into historic data and how previously requirements management was carried out and how people felt about it, and how effective the process was. Then the case study was looking into the impact of what people felt was a small change on a project or a program of projects, where actually the impact turned out to be a massive costly implication. One of the main sources of knowledge was the Lessons Learned Library, which Network Rail manages very well, and it's a very good place for information. And from the information about projects and how honest people were in listing any issues or any challenges or any good practices that came out of those analyses, I ran the process FMEA, which then gave me a little bit more data to look into critical system heuristics, so evaluating my own perception on requirements management process, just so I removed my own bias, because this was the field I was working in already. And from that, I also looked into determining of risks within the PACE program, the PACE framework, and whether where those risks were sitting, where those risks were coming from, and how critical they were. And I also used Bruce's favourite idea of zero modelling, which helped me draw some conclusions, which I'll show you later on. I ran a couple of surveys. So one survey was to ask people about their competencies and whether they were interested in learning more about requirements management, how they felt about systems engineering competencies, and whether they felt they needed a little bit more upskilling. And also another survey was on the the requirements management process itself, where I asked people various questions. I think it was 12 questions about their views on different parts of the process, and those people came from different roles within the process, and it was quite interesting to see how different the opinions were on the pace and adoption of pace, depending on their role within managing requirements and the life cycle of the project. I also I have been delivering requirements management masterclass, and it was a sort of a pilot for upskilling our colleagues in Northwest and Central region, and that gave a lot of information back to us as well, how people felt about the information that was there in procedures and policies, and how they felt they were able to apply that into practice. So lots of feedback from the masterclasses helped also with the research into this. And I also looked into requirements management in other industries. I looked into NASA, I looked into Boeing, some of the catastrophes that happened because of poorly managed requirements. So it can get very, very wrong. So as I mentioned earlier, critical system heuristics was developed by Ulrich, and it helped me establish my thinking about the process, and helped me really understand whether I was biased in thinking that it's all it's all down to one thing or another. So it really helped me drawing some good questions and answers, where the format of it is versus ought really helps, whether this is your opinion or whether this is the state of fact. So I would encourage anybody who's looking into any process improvement to really challenge their own bias, because you might find that you could be focused on one thing and not realize that you might be wrong. So summary findings for the purpose of this presentation is that the British government recently has been expressing that the railway really needs to start looking into systems thinking and really needs to start improving project delivery, because the economy is changing and our passenger demand is also changing. So that wider adaptation of systems thinking really needs to be considered. I also found that systems engineering practices and systems thinking give that structure, governance, and focus on reducing risks, which really helps in making the requirements management process a lot more efficient. And it's also recognized that upskilling on systems engineering practices, not just the requirements management, really helps in system thinking approach in projects. And I found that a lot of people didn't actually understand what systems engineering was about, even though they worked somewhere within that V cycle or that extended life cycle within the, with the V, as I showed you earlier. And so people didn't realize how important their role was within systems engineering. So it's not just systems engineers, everyone should know about this methodology. I also found, and I think many people would agree, that changes in organizational structure don't always go well on adopting new processes, and in requirements management it felt like that as well. And I also looked into the identification of process failures and development of ideas, of improvement ideas, before or prior identification and elimination of those bias need to be used with some kind of evaluation method. So, for example, the critical system heuristics is really useful for that. So system methodology gives a good, strong view on that interdependence between the process and that people input, which is based a lot of it is based on behaviors, perceptions, and also on competencies. And I also found that simple project alterations and scope changes do result in significant cost increases, and I proved that within my study. Above all, issues with requirements management are costly, common, and potentially catastrophic. So my reflections on the research method. So for the purpose of this presentation, I divided my reflections into two aspects. So looking into hard systems, When we look at the organisational structure and we change it, we have all the details in front of us. We have the charts, we have all the knowledge, we have all the expertise. But are we actually looking at the effects on teams and people and that culture? So we can see that the soft systems will be affected. So it's not just a hard system change, it is also soft system change. When we look at the historic reports, it's given us a really good insight into what's changed, and that also touches on people, how the perception changed, how behaviour changed, how culture changed. When we do competency survey, we can have a look at personal and professional views. Again, this is a hard system versus soft system. Are we always looking into what people think about their own competencies? Are they keen on exploring, or they feel this is not enough, or this is too much for them, or it's not relevant? The impact of scope change is also driven by perception on scalability. Some people might think a simple change of scope might just be a simple change of scope, but it might result in hundreds of thousands of pounds changes into funding that project, and obviously timescales, etc. So the perceptions are different for different people within different roles of that. Lessons learned data, fantastic library, great source of information, lots and lots of information. However, as a human, you start thinking, whose fault was it then? If something didn't work out, you think, oh, who was at fault? And you might not be thinking that maliciously, but you would be thinking that, right? You would be looking into where did the process fail, and looking what kind of, which role maybe didn't perform well. When I did the further analysis of data, I also looked into critical system heuristics. Again, I pushed really hard on this because it is really, really useful tool. And when I looked at the requirements management user survey, there are also differences in opinions based on job role, and this is what I found is quite prominent. People sitting in different roles had completely different views. Some said requirements are great, no problems with that. Others who were actually dealing with requirements on a different level said that it's absolutely unacceptable how it's running right now, and it really needs improving. And in terms of the survey from the masterclasses, again, those opinions are based on existing competency level. So, you can't always take everything from the hard system, from the data. You also need to ask your people. And yes, those can have catastrophic consequences, and human factors are always considered within those investigations. So above all, this is all leading to improvement. However, I found that, for me personally, the word improvement, similarly to the word flexibility, is vague. What does it mean? We know that improvement is bettering something, but different people see improvement in different ways for different things. So what you think might be improvement in the requirements process, for me, it might be a completely different thing, and we might disagree. So the soft systems really is a critical part of that. So the IDF Zero modelling technique, as I mentioned earlier, helped me really just visualise what could be done in assessing that continuous improvement in the requirements management process. So I picked out the core functions within the requirements management, and then I ran a lot of analysis around what influences those elements.
3 minutes.
Pardon?
3 minutes.
I'm nearly done. Yes, thank you. So for the purpose of this meeting, I could see that the systems thinking can contribute to improvements in the soft systems, and my recommendations in red circles there do prove that, because a lot of those are related to people, not just the processes. That's it from me.
Thank you very much, Magdalena. And I strongly agree with a couple of the things you said. Firstly, the importance of this area. It has such a profound effect on project outcome, that I think no matter how good your requirements management is, it's always an area worth investing in. But I also remark on the fact that on the great breadth of data and methods that you've used, and if you believe in evidence-based recommendations, but you know you're dealing with data that's incomplete and possibly biased, that is very good practice. So our final speaker is Victoria Greenwood, who's been working in Network Rail in the areas of sponsorship and programme management for quite some time. And Victoria is going to talk to us about soft systems methodology and its value in improving asset management.
Thank you, Bruce. Good evening, everyone. So yeah, as Bruce said, I'm currently a sponsor at Network Rail, but I, at the time of doing this project, was a programme manager in our London Rail team. That meant I worked closely with Transport for London and Arif Rail London on London Overground stations and lifts. So the project all kind of started with a hypothesis that I had that we could improve the performance of lifts by taking action to improve the soft systems around lifts. So that's kind of where it all started from. So our project title was, how useful is soft systems methodology to continuously improve asset management? Does it need to be adjusted? So I'm going to take you quickly through my method, my key findings, and some reflections at the end. So for anyone who, like me at the time, doesn't know much about soft systems methodology, it's an approach developed by Peter Checkland, and it's a way of learning about and improving soft systems. So it's kind of a logical 7-stage methodology where you inquire about the system and take into account multiple perspectives, so opinions from different people within the system. You kind of follow the stages through, ending with creating conceptual models of the areas that you want to improve, and then coming out with action at the end to hopefully improve your system. So, so why soft systems methodology then? So there's probably loads of continuous improvement methods you could think of. So why did I choose to use this one for this scenario? So after doing a bit of reading on soft systems methodology, I thought when thinking about lift asset management, it was really important that there was this emphasis on learning. So there's so many different stakeholders within the system, and a lot of them have different opinions on what works well and what doesn't. So having that learning at the beginning and collecting qualitative data was, I thought, really important. Also, soft systems methodology deals well with complexity, so it takes quite a logical step through learning about the system and then taking action. So I thought that was a big tick for me. The next one was the action at the end that you agree as a group has to be desirable and feasible. And I thought, if it's desirable and feasible, that means it's likely to be delivered rather than something that's a massive stretch target that we can't actually do. The next one was it being continuous. So although it's a 7-stage cycle, at the end you're suggested to kind of reflect on the improvement action that you've delivered and then kind of do the cycle again. So it really is a continuous improvement method using full. And the last one was the fact that it was novel. So did quite a bit of reading about soft systems methodology, seeing it was used quite a lot in the NHS, in aerospace a little bit, but I couldn't find any examples where it was used in full for rail asset management scenarios. So I thought I'll give it a go and see if it works. So once I kind of decided that soft systems methodology had some merits in this area and I wanted to go ahead with it, I looked at my aims and objectives. So I wanted to determine the effectiveness of soft systems methodology for continuous improvement of asset management by applying it to lifts. And so I had 3 objectives. The first one was apply it and get some recommendations for improving the performance. And the second and third were to evaluate how suitable it was and if I needed to adjust it at all. So next up, I kind of took these objectives and made them into a methodology. So first one that I've kind of talked about a little bit already was literature review. So read about soft system methodology where it had been applied before, and one key thing from my literature review, that was interesting for me, was that the definition by ISO of assets being anything that adds value to an organisation. So I think at the beginning I was thinking, well, talking about managing soft systems, is that really asset management? But from that definition, decided yes, it was. And the next stage was then to go out and collect data. So I had interviews with 10 people from different areas in the system, asked them the same 10 open questions and got really, really good quality, honest information back from them about things they thought were going well, things they thought could improve. So I was really pleased with that part of it. I also got some quantitative data, mainly to kind of supplement the things that I was finding out in the interviews. Next was data analysis. So I had a mass of really good interview data, but I needed to do something with it. So I first of all kind of split it up into themes where people had common views or didn't agree on things. And then I used 2 soft systems methodology tools. So one being a rich picture and one a root definition. So if I just skip to the next slide, it shows you an example of a rich picture. This isn't the one from my project, but it shows you basically visually put down everything that you found out about the system, where the relationships are between the different parts of the system, things that you want to highlight, and then you use this to then go on with the next stages of the research. So I did something similar to this, and then I did a root definition, which kind of the easiest way to explain it is a purpose statement for the system, what the system's about and what you're trying to achieve with it. So once I've done both of those, I shared them with the rest of the group and had them say, yeah, this is what we think, and we agree with it. The next 2 stages kind of come together. So from all of that work, from the rich picture and the root definition, there were some key areas that were had room for improvement. So I picked those as the systems of interest and created conceptual models for those, and then took them into a workshop setting with everyone that had been involved in the interviews. And we kind of debated the models to say, is this really what happens in real life? If not, why not? Or how can we improve them? How could we make this better? What could we change? And from that came out with a long list of actions of things that we wanted to change. Some of them weren't feasible, and so were kind of saved till next time. But we had kind of a list of actions that are then developed into kind of an implementation plan for improvement. And then throughout all of that, I was taking lots of notes and feedback on how useful this methodology was and any adjustments that I needed to make. So key findings. So we'd implemented it and had our recommendations for improvement, it was then onto the evaluation of the process, really. So after the workshop, I was a little bit disappointed because I'd imagined that I was going to come out of the workshop with loads of new innovative ideas that we'd never thought of before, and it was going to be kind of groundbreaking, but didn't quite get that. There were some new ideas, but not as many as I was hoping for. So then in that aspect, in this case, it didn't really outperform other continuous improvement methods. But the next couple, I think, were better than I'd expected. So we had a really broad range of agreed actions, and I think that was because we took a real holistic view of the system, didn't just focus on one specific area. So we had actions to improve lots of different areas in the system. The next, which definitely came out in the interviews for me, was a real learning and appreciation for other roles. So I learned things that I didn't know about people that I've been working with for ages, and other people said to me that, I didn't appreciate it was like that for frontline staff, for example, or things like that. So it was really good to really appreciate where the challenges are within the system. And so overall, I'd say it was suitable for lift asset management in that I was able to apply it and get some recommendations out of it. But to say it was suitable for asset management as a whole, I think I'd need to myself or others try it on different asset management scenarios. And then in terms of adjustments, so one thing I would say that might help bring out new kind of innovative ideas would be maybe to have some sort of selection criteria on who you choose. So all the people that I had were great and came up with great ideas, but I think potentially if I'd had someone from outside the system who could challenge us a little bit more, or someone who you know who's a little bit of a disruptive thinker and likes to kind of throw a spanner in the works and help us come up with new ideas, that might have made things a little bit better. So if I was doing it again, that's one change I would make. The next was really engaging your participants. So it's 7 stages. It does take quite a while to get through, and you're in danger of kind of losing people along the journey if you don't brief them regularly. So I'd say brief at the beginning, in the middle, and the end. I think that would bring out better results. The next adjustment, so I used interviews, but in Peter Chetland's kind of original text, he mainly focuses on workshops, or most people kind of use workshops to gather their data, but I found that the interviews were really good at bringing out maybe the things people didn't want to say in front of others. So I'd say if I was going to do it again, definitely do a mix of the two. And the last thing is kind of something I would say probably not to do. So there's a 4-stage sort of condensed version of soft systems methodology. And at the beginning I thought, oh great, 4 stages, I'll get it finished quicker. That would definitely be easier to do. But I found it was less prescriptive really than the 7 stages, so a little bit harder to follow. So if you're delivering it for the first time, I would say stick to the original 7-stage method would be my recommendation. So overall, I'd say that it was suitable for asset management with some adjustments. And in terms of its usefulness, I think it was superior to other continuous improvement methods in its ability to help us learn about the system, but not necessarily in the scale of improvement action, in this case anyway. So lastly then, some reflections and recommendations. So I'd say the first one really about people. So create a safe space for people to share their honest opinions throughout the process. And if you can, try and pick some people that you know have that real kind of innovative learning mindset to bring out new ideas. Quantitative data is not mandatory within soft systems methodology, but if you then need to go and take your information back to a business and make a case for why you're going to make this change, it's useful to have that backup data to back up what you're saying. I would also suggest adding safety, financial and an environmental focus in your interview questions, just to bring that focus in as you go through it. So although we did kind of talk about that, I didn't have a specific focus on it from the beginning. And the last one really is about, so I didn't know much about soft systems methodology before, and there aren't necessarily that many kind of step-by-step examples to follow, so at times it was quite challenging to deliver. As I said, I know the NHS do it quite a lot in other industries, so it might be, you know, a good idea to have some sort of SSM academy where people share information on how it was delivered and how you could do it better and get more out of it. So that would be something I would like to see. But thank you. Yeah, that was a whistle-stop tour from me.
Thank you very much, Victoria. I have to say, having heard Peter Chetland talk and having read one of his books, I was aware that soft systems methodology had a vast amount of experience behind it, decades mostly at the University of Lancaster. But it's a funny thing, the systems movement is very siloed. We don't talk to each other. So I was absolutely delighted when Victoria was prepared to give it a go, and I've certainly learnt a lot from that. So if I could invite the other 2 presenters to come back to the front, we'll open the discussion up to questions. Matt, how are we going to do offline questions?
Would you like me to monitor on?
If you wouldn't mind,
You want to alternate?
why don't we do just that?
Could I have the maps?
Oh yes.
Okay, but we'll start in the room. Who wants to ask a question? Please go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the presentation. Really, really useful to see that perspective. hard systems and fields of rail. So my question's for Magdalena and Simon. So I was really interested in your V diagram showing requirements management, not just like as a project focus, but sort of this continuous get to the end, evaluate your system, and then that feeds back up into your requirements for your next project. In terms of your improvements or how it's done at Network Rail at the moment, is there a proposal to really have requirements management almost at that asset management level rather than just project management level? So you almost have like an ongoing bank of Network Rail, almost requirements for the system, which help feed into your individual project enhancements or renewals requirements. Means you always have a set of requirements where you can constantly manage the performance of Network Rail and its assets. Is sort of that what you're envisaging? Is that what's done already?
Thank you. So the organisational changes I mentioned earlier, they mainly related to the devolution elements. So Network Rail divided into 5 regions, and each region is managing their own work. Going further, I think the business is changing again, and regions are evolving further into routes, and those are being self-managed. So I'm not sure what the plans are for those, but requirements management within the Northwest and Central, where I work, has focused mainly on creating a good platform for information. I created a library of requirements, so a standard set of requirements from every engineer, every discipline, and also functions like security operations. So projects, new emerging projects do have the library of standard requirements that can be used across and then consulted with the relevant owners of those requirements. There are plans for rolling out some of the upskilling elements. I think this is going to form part of the systems engineering competency rather than standalone requirements management. Again, this is all I can tell you about the future for now, as the business is changing for the CP7, especially Northwest and Central. Thank you.
I don't have one online at the minute, but I do have one if we're open to the room first.
If you only had like one sentence to summarise what's the advantage of soft systems from your studies, what kind of would those sentences sound like? In essence, what's the key benefit that you found from soft system?
So I think for me it was accommodating a lot of different perspectives to then get improved outcomes. I think often it's kind of the loudest person that shouts, you focus on their opinion and go with that. So it was nice to listen to everyone and then develop better solutions.
I think for me, soft and hard systems go hand in hand, just like safety and performance on the railway, and that one cannot function without the other.
I have a question, and I really would appreciate an honest answer to this, because I may need to change, but I encouraged all 3 of you to build models of what you were studying. Did they help? As I say, honest, please.
And the models of how we were going to plan it out.
Well, in your case, I didn't have to encourage so much because soft systems methodology has root definitions and rich pictures and so on. You had rather a lot of models. I
Yes.
think at least 3.
So for me, I'm neurodivergent. So for me, when I read Network Rail standards, it's just, oh my goodness, just words.
Yeah,
I really like context diagrams. I'm sure there's more people like that who just get lost with all the wording. I think image says more than anything, and especially a good context diagram that gives you a good perspective, and you can actually zoom into some elements and expand them even more. And then this is actually showing you the system and the system of systems. And you can, for me, I've got such a rich imagination, I can then see even beyond that picture and start seeing the relations within it.
Yeah, it's a very good way of presenting how the things work, how the things operate. Also define the boundaries.
Firstly, I think it's a really great point about diagrams. I think a lot of people online and in the room would probably agree. Diagrams are so valuable to convey concepts and things. I actually had a question primarily for Guillermo, but be interested in all of your thoughts really. I quite liked how the framework you presented was scalable and linked to complexity, and I think very much complexity drives risk, and that's absolutely. I wondered if you'd given any consideration to how you were going to categorize complexity. So I think we're very good at saying, oh, well, complexity drives risk. Actually doing something to define that and then use that meaningfully is actually quite difficult. So I wondered if you thought about it.
I did put a fair amount of thinking into it. So obviously you've got the project delivery risk, you've got the complexity, the amount of interfaces, internal, external, etc., etc. But after looking at it for a fair amount of time, I decided to have like 4 tiers plus the pieces here that I called, because they are aligned with network risk level of control.
So you equate the two.
Yeah, so they're pretty much aligned, and level of control is also based on the actual project complexity itself. And this is how network categorizes projects for engineering delivery.
Okay.
So, any more questions?
So with that said, then, I mean, with regard to the 4-level control, that will have they publicized the criteria in terms of how to define the project such one?
Say again?
So I'll repeat that for the benefit of those offline, because I'm nearer the microphone. Simon, I think, is asking, has Network Rail published the criteria for the levels of control?
Yes. So it is on one of the standards. I don't know exactly which one it is. It is something that gets undertaken on what we call the client part of it. So not in design, it's usually like the project engineering team, VP. But yeah, it does exist. I think it is a matrix. It depends on quite a few different factors. But yeah, it is well documented, yes.
Any more?
There's one in relation to that. So contextualizing this decision-making process, in one world, Rail is trying to devolve a lot of the decision-making as far down as possible and empower individuals with the right capabilities and competencies to make decisions. And then coming back up the other way, there's levels of control. A question I have around that is, on a day-to-day basis, how would that work? Because on a given project, you might have a decision that actually seems quite simple to make. And on the same project on another day, it could be quite the opposite. So how do you apply that in practice when it's down to an individual to assess what level of control should be applied on a day-to-day basis?
That is a very tricky question, and that would go primarily down to competence. And you've got a massive risk there, which is you don't know what you don't know. And that's why we need to have good people who can think systems and who can make that call, or who they need to approach, who they need to ask. They understand the boundaries of their knowledge, and they can actually effectively categorize the decision that they want to make. And this is one of the reasons why I insisted a lot in having a competence framework for decision making, so they can understand the complexity of the decision that they want to make, and effectively be able to categorize it on different levels of control. But yeah, I made a point a lot about informal decision making, and that's also about empowering individuals to be able to make decisions that they just know it is the right thing. If you are confident enough and you understand well the boundaries of your knowledge, sometimes the decision is clear.
So it relies on that competency framework. Mm-hmm. Has that been established?
No, that is a proposal I've got for. That's one of the proposals, having a competency framework for decision making. There is very solid ones for engineering, including systems engineering, systems integration, etc. But in terms of actual decision making, I think there's only like one very loose competence in the workload system. Something it's interesting because I presented this internally a couple of times in Network Rail, and people always picked a lot on the competence for option appraisal, because it's possibly a weak point that's not documented within Network Rail. Not saying that they're making the wrong decisions, but they should be able to demonstrate that they've got the right people making, undertaking option appraisal.
Time, I think, for one more question, if anyone wants to.
An observation. Sorry, in the room.
Guillermo, it was, in terms of the decision-making process, the research was in the context of option appraisal and engineering. Do you see it being so sort of adaptable to other more kind of strategic decision-making and other business processes where perhaps evidence and other things are a little bit looser and more?
Guillermo, because people online are having a little bit of trouble, let me repeat that the question was essentially to do with adaptation of the process to more strategic decisions.
Yeah.
It can be applied, it can be generalized for anything that relies on multi-criteria decision making. I mean, right now at the minute in the UK, we've got cost-benefit analysis, which is used for like very strategic large projects. High speed will be one example, and the two regional flavors of it, so WELTAC and I think it's called SCOTAC in Scotland. But there is no reason why it cannot be applied or generalized for anything that depends on multiple criteria for just to make a decision.
So I did say one more, but a question has popped up from John Elphick on the chat for you, Victoria. Did you experience any resistance to using soft systems methodology, and how did those you engaged with respond to?
So I think the people that I engaged, particularly the participants throughout, responded really well. I'd say at some stages you kind of think, oh, what's this stage all about? Where's it going to lead? So sometimes a little bit of confusion, I'd say, in where we're going with it. But I think everyone took part really well. I'd say probably the only resistance maybe in the fact that at the end of I think sometimes we want the really big instant change, and certainly in this case what came out were kind of the smaller, more iterative changes. So it's just kind of at the end you sort of have to manage expectations and say it might not be a big boom and something that's going to improve performance, for instance, straight away. So yeah, I think I had to do a bit of managing expectations when sharing the results at the end.
Okay, so I think we'll close the proceedings there. But before we do, I hope you I thought that was an extremely interesting set of presentations, and I also applaud the commitment of. You'll forgive me if I call you young people from my perspective, to making the world a better place, and I think that alone deserves our applause. If you're online and choose to switch your camera on and applaud with us, please do so. Thank you very much. And we will close it there because we're going to the pub. Sorry if you're online, you can't join us. Thank you.
No. Thank you, everybody.
Have a quick look at the comments. You've got some very nice comments.
Thank you very much.